Teresa Knorr was born on March 16, 1946 in Sacramento, California, the capital of the state. Her father worked as a cheesemaker on a dairy farm, a skilled position that provided the family with a relatively comfortable income. Her mother stayed at home, caring for the children and managing the household. To support the family further, she occasionally produced colored pencils, which were sold to students from low-income families. On the surface, the Knorr family appeared stable, but behind closed doors, tensions were already forming. Teresa had an older sister named Gwen. Relatives later described Gwen as an ordinary child, neither especially gifted nor particularly difficult. Teresa, however, developed an intense and persistent resentment toward her sister. From early childhood, she showed hostility, jealousy, and aggression, frequently starting fights and competing for attention. In 1956, when Teresa was 10 years old, the family dynamic changed dramatically. Her father was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and lost his job shortly afterward. His health declined rapidly, and with it, his emotional stability. Financial stress increased, and the household atmosphere became increasingly volatile. According to later accounts, the father became withdrawn, deeply depressed, and emotionally unpredictable. When Teresa's mother died, the situation worsened. Unable to afford the large family home, Teresa's father sold most of their belongings and moved with his two daughters into a small apartment. The loss of stability, combined with grief and financial hardship, left a lasting impact on the children, particularly Teresa. In September 1962, at just 16 years old, Teresa married her first husband, John Wynn. Shortly after the wedding, she dropped out of school and became pregnant. Later that same year, she gave birth to a son named Howard. What initially appeared to be a new beginning quickly turned into a troubled marriage. Teresa repeatedly accused John of infidelity and betrayal. She contacted law enforcement on multiple occasions, claiming he was abusive. However, friends, co-workers, and relatives consistently described John as calm, nonviolent, and patient. Despite the ongoing accusations and emotional pressure, he remained in the relationship. On July 6, 1964, John Wynn returned home after celebrating his birthday with friends. An argument broke out between the couple. Teresa later stated that she feared for her life and acted in self-defense. During the trial, she portrayed John as aggressive, unstable, and dangerous. Witness testimony contradicted her claims, but the jury ultimately accepted her account. Teresa was acquitted and released while pregnant. The verdict raised concerns even at the time, but the case was closed. In March 1965, Teresa gave birth to a daughter, Sheila. Soon after, her behavior became increasingly erratic. She began drinking heavily and frequently left her children in the care of others. During this period, she entered a relationship with a disabled U.S. military veteran named Estelle. The relationship ended abruptly after he learned of Teresa's infidelity. She was forced to leave with her children and once again faced instability. In early 1966, Teresa married an infantryman named Robert. Over the next several years, she gave birth to 4 more children: William, Robert Jr., Susan, and Terry. Neighbors later described the household as chaotic and deeply dysfunctional. Arguments were frequent, and the children appeared fearful and withdrawn. Teresa became obsessively jealous, accusing Robert of affairs without evidence. The constant conflict eventually drove him away. In December 1970, Robert left the marriage. Despite his attempts to remain involved in his children's lives, Teresa blocked all contact, isolating the children completely. Over the following years, Teresa married 2 more times. Each marriage followed the same pattern: initial charm, escalating accusations, and eventual public conflict. Her final marriage ended in 1976 after she accused her husband of serious misconduct involving one of her daughters. No charges were filed, but the marriage collapsed, marking a turning point. After her last divorce, Teresa withdrew almost entirely from society. She rarely left the house, had little contact with neighbors, and stopped working. Her alcohol consumption increased and her physical health declined. According to later testimony, she grew increasingly resentful of her daughters as they entered adolescence, directing much of her anger toward them. The family eventually moved to a small 2-bedroom apartment in Sacramento. Neighbors later reported concerning conditions inside the apartment and noted that the children were never allowed outside. Authorities would later confirm that the children were removed from school, denied medical care, and cut off from all outside contact. Susan, the eldest daughter, eventually experienced a severe mental health crisis and was hospitalized. While receiving treatment, she described the environment inside the home. An investigation was opened, and Teresa was briefly charged with child abuse. However, the case collapsed when the other children, still under their mother's control, refused to testify. When Susan was returned home, the situation escalated. According to later court findings, she remained under strict confinement. After years of isolation and mistreatment, Susan died while still in the apartment. Teresa instructed her sons to remove the body. Due to the lack of identification, the case was recorded as the death of an unidentified individual. Following Susan's death, Teresa redirected her control toward her daughter Sheila. In 1985, she forced Sheila to financially support the household. When Teresa later accused her of misconduct, Sheila was confined inside the apartment. After several days, she died. As before, the body was abandoned in a remote location and remained unidentified for years. In 1986, fearing discovery, Teresa ordered her sons to destroy the apartment to eliminate evidence. The fire drew attention, but by then, Teresa had already prepared to flee. She left California with her eldest son, Howard, while the remaining children eventually escaped and sought help. Years later, one of Teresa's surviving daughters contacted authorities and later appeared on the television program America's Most Wanted. This renewed public attention forced law enforcement to re-examine the case. On November 10, 1993, Teresa Knorr was arrested in Salt Lake City, Utah, where she had been living under an assumed name. When her son agreed to testify against her, Teresa accepted a plea deal. In October 1995, she was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms in prison. Investigators later reopened the decades-old case involving the death of Teresa's sister, Gwen. Although suspicion remained, the lack of physical evidence prevented further prosecution. In 2019, Teresa Knorr applied for parole and was denied. Due to her age and declining health, another hearing has been scheduled. Whether she will ever be released remains uncertain. This case serves as a chilling reminder of how prolonged abuse can remain hidden for years, and how fear, manipulation, and isolation can silence victims until it is almost too late.